you're joining us once again for Tuesday Talks. And let me just get my screen shared, and then we will begin. So let me just give it 1 second because we are making sure we're live on YouTube. All righty. So it's a little bit of a different Tuesday talk this week because we're going to be talking about performing arts programs, which is quite different than some of the other talks that we've been doing in the past. So I'm really, really honored to have these wonderful guests from very, very great institutions. And they are going to share a little bit about what it means to apply to a performing arts program, what a performing arts program looks like, what auditions are like. This is great information. I always learn a lot from it. And so thank you so much for joining me, Kathy, Matthew, and Beth. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and then we'll go forward.
Great. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Matthew Artizone, and I'm the Associate Dean of Admissions and Enrollment at the Eastman School of Music at the University of Rochester.
And hello, everyone. I'm Kathleen Tisar. I'm the Associate Dean for Enrollment Management at the Juilliard School in New York City.
And hi, everybody. I'm Beth Weiss. I'm the Director of Conservatory Admissions and Enrollment Management at the Oberlin Conservatory. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So to get us started, we are looking right now at a map, of course, of the United States, and it shows the location of each of our schools. We've sort of come together to do this as 3 different kinds of music schools, and we're going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of school environments that are out there and the different kinds of degree programs and the admissions and audition process as well. But as you can see here, we're all located on sort of the eastern side of the United States. Oberlin is part of a college and conservatory. Eastman is part of a university, a school of music within a university, and Juilliard is, of course, a standalone conservatory. So those are kind of, in a way, the 3 types of schools that we'll be talking about today, and one of the reasons that we've come together as this group to talk to all of you. So for starters, I'm going to introduce Eastman. The Eastman School of Music at the University of Rochester is a professional school of music. And if you want to advance to the next slide, we have a beautiful facility in downtown Rochester, which is in Western New York State. So it's not quite in New York City, about 350 miles from New York City, in fact, closer to Toronto in Canada than to New York. But in a beautiful area called the Finger Lakes region with lots of lovely wineries and countryside. But Rochester itself is a small city of about 1 million people. And Eastman is right in the center of downtown in the cultural district. Our main performance hall, which you see in the upper left corner there, is Kodak Hall, and is also home to the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. It's where our orchestras and wind ensemble and opera productions happen. Lots of guest artists come through and perform there. Kilbourne Hall on the right is where a lot of student recitals and smaller ensembles. You see the jazz ensemble in there in that picture. And then Hatch Recital Hall lower down, which is one of our more modern spaces, fully equipped for live streaming and internet to adjustable acoustics and all that cool stuff. And then on the next slide, we just have some fun facts about the school. I already mentioned where we're located and that we are part of a university. We're one of 6 schools at the University of Rochester, which also includes a School of Education, School of Medicine, and a business school, as well as the main College of Arts, Sciences, and Engineering, which actually encompasses 2 schools, the School of Arts and Sciences and the School of Engineering. So there is a dual degree option at Eastman to pursue the professional degree in music with us, and also a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degree at the college. We're a relatively, I guess, small to mid-size school of music with about just over 500 undergraduate students and another 300 or so, 500 undergraduate students and another 300 or so graduate students. Roughly 25% of our students are international, and that goes for the whole university as well. Just over a quarter of all of the students at the university are from different countries. All of the students that attend Eastman are eligible for merit scholarships, and they're pursuing degrees in all of these different areas that you can see. The vast majority of our students are performance majors, which means they're studying mostly classical performance, but also a number of students studying jazz. And then the other majors we offer include composition, film scoring, music education, theory, musicology, and a music leadership degree, which is now available 100% online, our first online degree. So that's a little bit about Eastman. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy.
So this photo shows the Juilliard School. As I said earlier, we're in New York City, and the horizontal bright colored building is our building. That particular side is all glass. We really just have the one building. It's pretty massive, but that's our campus. And we're right on Lincoln Center. So to the left, you can see the Geffen Hall, which is the home of the New York Philharmonic. Juilliard is one of the 13 resident entities within Lincoln Center. So you also have, besides Lincoln Center, besides Juilliard and the New York Philharmonic, you have the Metropolitan Opera, Jazz at Lincoln Center, Film at Lincoln Center, etc. So we're right in the thick of it, which is really one of the things that gives Juilliard its unique flavor, because there is so much art happening in the city, and the location of the school makes it very, very easy to connect with that kind of art happening. Although I have to say it is COVID time right now, so a lot of that art is not happening in person, it's happening online. We have some brief facts on the next slide. We have about 850 students, and that's really about the same size as Eastman, as Matthew said. But the fact is that we're not part of university, so our 850 students are the entire Juilliard school, and we're about a third international. And another unique point for Juilliard is that we're not just a music division, but we also have dance and drama. And that makes the school, gives it a different flavor when you're a part of the school and your colleagues are dancers or actors or playwrights. We do have a cross-registration program with Columbia University and Barnard College, but it is a cross-registration for classes, not a double degree or a double major. And everyone who applies who applies for admission can apply for merit and need-based scholarships. And the consideration is the same whether you're a US citizen or not. And I'd like to add on the one more point, and that is that last year we opened a pre-college campus in Tianjin, China, and this year we opened the graduate studies portion of Tianjin Juilliard, and we'll be opening a few other divisions in that school. But what makes it nice is that we now have a presence on the ground on the other side of the planet. And so it's a place for young students to study their musical instruments. And it's also a place for graduate students to polish their artistry in a location that's outside the US. So it's pretty exciting place to visit if you should have the chance. Beth's going to tell us now about Oberlin.
Great, yeah. Hi everyone, there's a pretty picture of Oberlin. And I think there's another pretty picture. Are there some more pictures? I forget what's, yeah, so there's, the top right is the front view of the conservatory. And on the left, it's our Cole building, which is the home of the Jazz Studies Department. And then bottom left is one of our recital halls, Stull Hall on the within the conservatory. The difference is Oberlin is a small liberal arts college town, about 35 miles southwest of Cleveland. And we offer many of the same things that Eastman and Juilliard offer. I think the main distinctions would be that we're all undergraduate. So we only have students who are pursuing a Bachelor of Music degree. We do offer all the same majors and areas of study as most of our peer institution, but again, all undergraduate. And we are on the campus with Oberlin College, which is about a 2,200 student population where students are getting a Bachelor of Arts. And so we're not in a big city, we're in a small college town. And the total enrollment, it says here, facts and figures, about 580 students, again, all undergrads. We have about 17 to 20% international. And we do have a wonderful option of pursuing not only a Bachelor of Music, but a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Music at the same time. It's generally a 4.5 or 5-year program. It's one of the more popular options in the conservatory. We have about a third of our conservatory students who are exercising that option. So they're going ahead and studying viola, as well as chemistry, something like that as an example. And same as Juilliard and Eastman, we also have merit scholarships available for international students. So yeah, that's maybe Oberlin in a nutshell. And this is Matthew, right? Is this?
Thank you. I needed that.
Okay.
So as we said in the beginning, the three of us represent three different kinds of schools, although there are all of these nuances to these kinds of schools, as you'll see. And in fact, among us, I think we all, in a way, are thought of as conservatories, at least by some people. Oberlin certainly has that name in its title. Eastman is on a separate campus from the university. So you're going to see lots of different variations within these categories that we're going to describe to you. But the idea here is to just help you understand the different kinds of environments in which you can pursue music degrees. So the first one we're looking at is the university. So generally, of course, the university is going to be larger in size. We talked a little bit about that already. We all have similar enrollment sizes in the music schools. And then if you branch out, I didn't mention at the University of Rochester, there are another roughly 10,000 students in all of those other schools that I talked about, the majority of whom are in the College of Arts and Sciences and Engineering. And, so it just puts you into an environment where you can interact with students that are studying other topics. You might have a roommate who's a biology major. And you also will have a wider range of options of things to study, which may or may not be what you're looking for, but is one thing to keep in mind. Typically, the university music school is going to put you in an environment where lots of different degree options might be available. And we're going to talk later about what those degrees actually look like, but we've listed some of them here. It could include the Bachelor of Music, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Fine Arts, or Bachelor of Science degree. And of course, a variety of majors, as we've said. Often that impacts what's available just within the music school. So if there is a College of Engineering, for example, maybe the music school is more likely to also offer sound engineering or sound recording, as there can be some crossover in the faculty areas of expertise and the courses that are offered. And then double majors and dual degrees are often an option in a university setting, pursuing one major here and another major in another unit. There's also the environment to consider. If you're a student who wants to major in music, but also wants to have that sort of traditional college experience, you might want to put yourself into a university setting where you have that whole campus experience available to you, football games on Saturdays and all the rest of it. But as with any of these programs, we'll see that if you're looking for a professional music degree, the faculty are key. Who will you study with? Who will be your teacher over the 4 years of your undergraduate is obviously a key consideration. On the next slide, it's an outline of the college environment. So college typically is, of course, smaller in size from the university. We mentioned all the different sort of professional schools that a university often has, typically professional degrees offered at the graduate level, like business and medicine and law and those kinds of things. Whereas a college is going to be more sort of undergraduate focused. They may have some master's degrees, but it's not as, they don't have all the professional schools that you associate with the university. So typically smaller in size, still a wide range of offerings. but maybe more kind of focused around the liberal arts as a main area of focus. So still the full range of degrees may be encountered. And again, what's offered through the music school might be impacted by what else is going on at the college. So still the option for double degrees and dual majors, and just a different campus setting, perhaps in a college setting versus the university. You know, for the university, of course, you picture the big green expanses of grass between, you know, tall brick buildings, and the college might be a little bit more tightly focused around a geographic area. But again, as with any professional degree in music, who you study with is key, and you'll find excellent faculty to study with in many of the college settings as well. And then on the next slide is the conservatory model. So these do tend to be smaller in size, not connected to another institution necessarily. And so all of the students there are focused solely on that professional training. So the degree offerings will be limited to those professional degrees, Bachelor of Music or Bachelor of Fine Arts, with some possibility for double majoring perhaps. So the difference between double major and a dual degree is essentially within the same degree, you have two different majors. So an example would be you're doing the Bachelor of Music degree in both performance and maybe composition. Might be an option, or cross-registration with another area. So in a conservatory setting, many times music will not be the only art that's being pursued. So there may be a dance department or theater, which would also offer other opportunities for collaboration, cross-registration as well. The whole experience in a conservatory is really centered around that performance and music-related study. And again, and this is a consistent, you know, between all of these slides, of who you study with is of key importance. So I think the final thing I'll say here about the types of schools is that there are many more perhaps similarities than differences, and a lot of what will drive your search for a professional program is the faculty and who you will study with. And I think we all see applicants that are applying to our schools that are applying to lots of different types of schools. So it's really not a question of, you know, one type of school is the best one for you to apply to. It's really, who do you want to study with? What kind of campus experience do you want? And where can you find that experience? So with that, we're going to go on and talk about degree types.
Yeah, can you fill in the whole slide? Yeah, so it can get confusing when you're trying to figure out where you belong in terms of your, the degree that you'd wish to pursue. So here's 4 examples. The Bachelor in Music is the most common thing that Juilliard, Eastman, and Oberlin is conferring. I talked a little bit about the Bachelor of Arts earlier on our college side. The difference between a Bachelor of Music and a Bachelor of Arts, I think of it this way. A BM is about 80% of your day or your week or your life is music making in some way, music history, music theory, oral skills, piano, lessons, studio class, chamber ensembles, large ensembles, that sort of thing. A Bachelor of Arts might be more half music and half something else, liberal arts usually. So, and a BA does not require an audition for entrance, where a Bachelor of Music does. And a Bachelor of Arts is for folks who really love music, who want to experience music within the context of a liberal arts institution, but it's not necessarily always deemed as pre-professional training. And mainly that has to do with the concentration of the time and the level at which you're doing it. The BFA is often for areas that are non-music, so theater, dance, visual arts, sometimes creative writing, and that would be the parallel to the Bachelor of Music in terms of its intensity and comprehension of comprehensive nature of the study. And then a Bachelor of Science is going to be yet another bachelor option where obviously it's focused more on the sciences. So a liberal arts, the BA is sort of an exploratory liberal arts opportunity, and you can do that as a major in music, or you can do it in biology, that's fine. And the BFA and Bachelor of Music are more concentrated portfolio or audition driven programs for entrance. Yeah. I think Kathy, this is you. Mute, you're muted. I think you're still muted. You're stuck.
Damn, too many buttons, too many buttons. Beth, this one's still yours, and I was going to grab the next.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, this is still me too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of talked about this, right? Sorry. Yeah. The Bachelor of Music, where there's that 65-80% of your day week music. Yeah. And that's a pre-professional degree program, being a performer on the stage, chamber music, large ensemble, composer in residence. You want to be a studio teacher, either at a large institution, conservatory, school of music, or a private studio teacher at a community music school or out of your home base. So those are just a few options for some of the narrow Bachelor of Music careers. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take this one. And the next one, I'll take both. So just to lay out the path, typically you're going to go from a Bachelor of Music to a Master of Music to a DMA, Doctor of Musical Arts degree. And that's the rule is that you can't get a master's without a bachelor's, and you can't get a doctorate without getting a master's degree. So you will find, though, that there are different names of degrees, just as Beth was explaining. For undergrad, you have different names of degrees. On the grad level, it becomes a little more clear that an MA degree would be more towards research, including in music. So you can do an MA in music, just like you can do a BA in music. And then the MM in music, or even the MFA, would be more practical applications. So the bulk of your time is focused on your art form, not on research. And similarly, with the doctoral level, you have a PhD degree, which is all about the research, and then a DMA, which includes research, but is more about the practical application of your particular art form, your area of interest. That said, on the next slide, you'll see that there are some programs that are actually not degrees. And it's good to know about this because like the artist diploma, certificates of various kinds, like a professional studies certificate or a diploma. So these are programs that polish your art form, so you become a better musician by focusing solely on this and not having academic classes. The only catch is that you can't go on to a degree program from a diploma or certificate. So if you have a bachelor's degree and you then go to an artist diploma and then you want a master's degree, you can go to the master's degree because you have the bachelor's degree, but the diploma is kind of a step aside. So you really would do these programs based on your goals, and not just, oh, I'd like the sound of that program, because again, these programs take you out of that stepping stone of bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctoral degree, and they're not degrees, but they can be really great training. So there's a lot more variation in the definition of these programs. So you'd have to look at each school offering this sort of program to make sure you understand what it is that you're getting in that particular program at that particular school. So having said that, each of our schools offers various degrees and programs. Matthew, do you want to start with Eastman?
Absolutely. At Eastman, we like to think of ourselves as a comprehensive music school, covering everything from performance to composition, music education, to the research side of the studies, musicology, theory, and beyond. So we offer the Bachelor of Music degree with 5 different majors: performance, composition, music education, jazz, and theory. The Master of Arts degree, which is the sort of pre-PhD research degree in music theory pedagogy, or the teaching of music theory, in ethnomusicology and musicology, and as I mentioned now, in music leadership, our new online degree. And then the Master of Music degree is the performance degree, although it's also offered in composition, music education, and those other majors where the student wishes to pursue performance studies along with those majors. The MM is also where we offer the film composition program. And then the PhD is offered in theory, musicology, music teaching and learning, and composition. And then the DMA is that doctoral level performance degree again.
And at Juilliard, we have, as I said earlier, we have dance majors and acting majors as well. So we have a BFA for the dance majors and a BFA for the acting majors, and also an MFA for acting. And then the rest of the degrees are music performance degrees. So basically everyone at Juilliard is a performance major. The BM is the undergraduate performance degree. The MM and the GD, graduate diploma, are the next level up. And then we have an artist diploma and a Doctor of Musical Arts degree. Similarly, those are all focused on performance. The GD and the AD are diplomas, not degrees. And then everything else is a degree program. Beth?
Yeah, and at Oberlin, like I mentioned, it's pretty simple in that way that we're all undergraduates. So we have the Bachelor of Music students in the conservatory. There are Bachelor of Arts students on the college side, Oberlin College of Arts and Sciences. And then there are a handful, well, a third of the school who's pursuing both the Bachelor of Music and the Bachelor of Arts in the double degree option. So it's a little bit more simplistic in that it is all undergraduate and limited. But that's, we prepare you well to go to Eastman and Juilliard and our other peer schools to get your master's degree. And I know that they love to see our students coming in their applicant pile because they're talented and they're ready to work. And so that's, I feel good to be able to feed those my colleagues' students. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is just, if you can, put it all up there so I know what we're dealing with here. I'm sorry, the majors and the application process, this is me, right? So yeah, we'll be talking about a lot of areas of study. When Oberlin says they have 25 areas of study, we talk about performance, right? So it's anything from double bass through bassoon, all the way down to viola and voice, right? And there is a jazz component, and there are also composers. We have electronic and computer music composers, as well as acoustical composers at all of our schools. And then there are some schools that have the film scoring and some of the other leadership degrees that my colleagues have been talking about. So that's basically, those are the majors that are offered. And when you apply, you'll see how that, which one to pick. So that's, Kathy?
Great. So that's a great lead into the actual application process for what we're really going to focus in on here, now that we've talked through all of these different degree types, is the Bachelor of Music degree. That's the degree that we all have in common. That's the one that is that most of our students are pursuing. And with that previous slide, just to keep in mind that there are a lot of what we'll talk about is aimed at the performance major, but there are these other majors that Beth mentioned. So composition, for example, will have additional requirements as part of the application process, namely a portfolio of work. The music education major may have, an additional essay or interview that's associated with that major. So whatever major you're pursuing, you always want to be looking for the specific requirements for that particular major. But we'll go through the general requirements for the Bachelor of Music degree overall here. What this chart shows you on the slide is that on the left are the probably familiar components of a regular college application. The application form, the fee that goes along with that, transcripts, record of your high school study, focusing on 9th through 11th grade, because of course you're applying during the fall of your final senior year in high school. Essays, which we'll talk about in a second, but are and especially, maybe the regular college application process, a really central piece of the application. One of the ways that the applicant sets themselves apart from other applicants who will have strong grades and test scores. Test scores, as I mentioned, and then recommendations from various teachers. So the cool thing about applying to a performing arts program is that you still get to do all of that, and then you get to do more. So that's great, right? So you still have a long form application to fill out for whichever school you're applying to. One thing to be aware of when applying to a music school or a performing arts school is you always want to make sure you're completing the right form, right? So especially when you get into a school that's part of a parent institution like a college or a university. for some reason, we all operate differently. And it's just how it is. It's not that we've decided to do that to drive you crazy, but you'll find, you know, there's one university where it's one application through the main admissions office, and maybe there's a supplemental form that you have to fill out to apply to the music school, and that's it. There are others where it's going to be a completely separate application directly to the music school, and it doesn't have anything to do with the main university's undergraduate application process. So you always need to go to the school or department's website and see exactly what form they're requiring of you. But that form will undoubtedly be on the school's website. It'll be a long form. You want to start it early, figure out everything that's involved in it, and allow yourself time to complete it. We're going to talk about the timeline on a later slide, but essentially, you know, you're looking at, for music applications, often around early December as a deadline, in order to give us time to process things before the audition. And so it really does start early in the fall of your senior year. We still will look at the transcript, and we'll talk about how these things are weighted a little bit later. But that is a requirement you'll find, you know, even for a performing arts school. We, you know, want to be sure that you're on track to complete high school and that you will have finished high school when you start your undergraduate degree. Kathy was talking about the requirements of finishing the bachelor's degree before going on to the master's degree. And that applies to going into the bachelor's degree as well. You need to have finished high school. But of course, we'll be interested to see what your academic level of performance is as well. The essays are still important, and while the audition, which we're going to talk about separately, is certainly the most important component for a professional degree program, the essay is an opportunity for the applicant to tell us something about themselves that we won't find out through the audition itself, or through the application form and the transcript. So it goes beyond telling us about your accomplishments to telling us something, you know, that's really unique to you. The important thing with the essay is to follow the prompts. You know, so each school and each application might have a different prompt question that they're asking you to address. And you really do want to address that prompt. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to see how you express yourself in writing, to see how you are sort of thinking about your place in the world and why you're applying to a performing arts program at this point. It's really, we should learn something about you that, again, we won't learn through any other aspect of the application. And then test scores may or may not be required. That really is going to depend on the institution. You know, maybe especially those of us that are more sort of conservatory oriented, haven't been requiring test scores for a long time. And even some major universities are now starting to consider different ways of meeting that requirement or being more flexible with that requirement. Recommendations are still a thing, but whereas, you know, a standard college application will want academic subject teachers to write your recommendations. Most of our schools will want artistic teachers, teachers from your area of study to write those. But as with all of this, you'll want to keep careful track of each school's specific requirements, because you can still have a professional music school that wants maybe one academic recommendation as part of the usually 3 total that they're looking for. So keep track of those specific requirements. And then all of that goes into the application form that comes to us, you know, online, and then is followed by an audition. And that, of course, is a whole separate thing. So we're going to drill down into that a little bit later. But the next thing that we want to address specifically for international applicants is that there is, in the United States, of course, an English language proficiency requirement. Now, I know for many students in India, that's not an issue. You've been, you know, speaking and studying in English for many years, but it's just something to be aware of. Most of us will have a question on our application or some way of sort of determining what your background is and whether or not you need to submit, you know, proof essentially of your English proficiency. So the most common way for assessing that has been TOEFL, but many of us now are also adding other options into the mix, especially with the challenges of taking and administering TOEFL in the current pandemic situation. So Duolingo is out there. IELTS might be an option. So this slide just shows what each of our 3 schools is doing. And even just by glancing at this slide, you can see every school has its own variations on these requirements. And so this is another important area to research carefully, find out what the actual requirement is at the schools that you're applying to, and proceed accordingly. But obviously a lot of overlap there too, so you shouldn't have to be doing different tests for every school. The bottom line is we all just want to assess that you have the level of English proficiency necessary to be successful in our curriculum. So with that, we're going to circle back to the application process and the audition.
Excellent. Yeah, this is probably the biggest part of getting into a conservatory or a music school or an institute of music or whatever you want to, however the labels are. Audition, 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 right? So the application is key, and how nicely you write your essay and all of your recommenders, but you have to, as they say in jazz, the play's the thing, right? Isn't that what they say? Right. So anyway, it's really important as you enter for the fall, that as you prepare for your audition, that you know what each school's requirements are, because perhaps they will overlap and be similar, but they may have different repertoire that they're asking for. So go ahead, those of you who are seniors can take a look and start planning how your audition program will go. Many of the schools require a pre-screen round, which is sort of a first pass, a first round. Often the deadline for that is coming up December 1. So hopefully they want to have a quick listen to see if you can be invited to submit more. And typically the submit more part is an online or an on-campus physical live audition. But because of coronavirus, we've all had to alter that a little bit. And some schools are still in the process of trying to figure out what this means for this year. Many are doing Zoom live virtual auditions. Some are still holding out for live auditions in person in March. Many are asking for a recording to be the actual audition of record. So you have to check the fine print for all of the different schools to see what's being required, and how this year the school's auditions are being planned. Okay. And then in terms of prep for your audition, you want to be working on your audition repertoire as much as you can, practicing your audition program, book a church and try to have an opportunity to invite your parents and your friends and your wiggly neighbor kids to sit in the front row to make you nervous, to see if you can work through your audition program. And again, this is in preparation for a live audition, which might be elusive this year because of the pandemic. But these are just ways that you can practice your audition. And I think that what we've seen over the years is that students do get better at auditioning. Your first one might be a little, it's not going to be bad, but you can probably be more nervous. And as you get used to it, like with anything else, experience is a wonderful teacher. So as you go through the process several times, you're really going to hone your skill on how to audition and how that will go. So yeah, these are just some clues into how to practice your auditions. And then in most cases, you'll be doing a recorded audition this year if you're in this cycle for fall 21. So booking a nice space to make that recording, a choir room at the high school, maybe a quiet room in your home if you can find one. We don't necessarily require a recording studio, the expense of that. And in fact, a lot of faculty do not want to have a super enhanced recording that you submit. They want to hear you and they want to hear what you're putting out there. So it's not necessary or even encouraged to outlay that extra expense. So make a nice recording that's reflective of your abilities and go ahead and upload it. That works for both screening as well as a final audition experience.
Thanks, Beth. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about financial aid and merit scholarships. This is one area kind of similar to everything else where you have to check with each school to see what works, what the requirements are, what the parameters are for how each school does this thing. You have to check on audition rep, you have to check on audition mode, like recorded or live Zoom or whatever. And then you also have to check on financial aid and merit scholarships. It is quite possible that international students may qualify for institutional need-based grants or merit-based awards, or possibly both. But depending on the school, that you might have to do a separate application for some of these awards. If you are a US citizen or permanent resident, you can fill out the FAFSA, and that could qualify you for US government aid. But assuming you're an international applicant, you will have to investigate what each school requires. We also, just in general, encourage students to look for scholarships wherever they're from. So this can be, you know, a student in the US finding out that there's a little scholarship from their parents' place of employment, or it could be an international student who learns that there's some government funding or foundations in the home country that will help sponsor the student to study abroad in the US. The main thing, though, is that you are aware of what the possibilities are at each school where you apply. Sometimes with a major university, especially if you're not applying as a music student, you might find that you apply to the university, but you have a separate application for like a Board of Trustees scholarship or a presidential scholarship or something like that, in which case, if you don't fill out those applications, you are not considered. So the bottom line is, you can possibly be considered for merit and need-based awards, but you also have to be very careful. Sorry for the siren. I'm in New York. Oh my gosh, lots of sirens. But you also have to be aware of each school that you're applying to and what those requirements are. On the next slide, we can see what each of our schools offers. And the good news is that, yes, you can apply as an international applicant for funding from the institution. And just to point out the application deadlines for aid, Oberlin has the earliest, January 15th, and then Eastman, February 15th, and Juilliard, March 1st. So as an international applicant, you are applying to the school, but you do have a process, as noted on the slide, for applying for consideration for scholarships from the institution itself. And Matthew, I think you're going to explain about decision-making.
I will certainly try. So a question we often get is, okay, so how do you make decisions ultimately? And so the first slide here outlines a process that probably more people are familiar with, which is the non-performing arts admissions process, where a lot of schools will talk about a holistic approach to reviewing the application. So there's everything, you know, in your file that you submitted. There's test scores, transcripts, resume, essays, recommendations from people who know you. All of this is sort of reviewed. You know, often there might be other components here as well. Interviews, video uploads are now a thing at a lot of colleges. But all of that is sort of considered as the college shapes its class, as they put it. So they'll always have, you know, their own sort of ideas of what kinds of students they want to enroll. Certainly, you know, there may be an academic cutoff. I remember one university where I used to work, but in the college, in the non-music admissions area, they always talked about sort of 4 categories of college students, and, you know, academic all-stars was one of those categories, but there were also, you know, student athletes, there were student leaders, you know, students who had demonstrated their ability to lead projects and that sort of thing. You know, so there can be different things that a regular college might be looking for in shaping its class. But on the next slide, in the performing arts realm, it's similar but different. So as if we hadn't driven home the point enough yet, this scale shows the audition as one sort of big heavy rock. It must be denser than those other rocks to be to be even on the scale there. But all of those other things are still on the scale and are still being considered. The way to think of it is that the auditions comes really first for a lot of us in the process. We're not even going to get to the point of reviewing the academics and what your recommenders said and how your writing looks until you've been recommended by the faculty for admission to the program. So, one common question we get is, how important is my academic record, or how heavily are my academics weighted compared to the audition? And one way to think about that is that, however stellar the academics may be, perfect test scores and a, very high GPA, if the audition doesn't pass the mark for the faculty and they don't recommend you, the process kind of ends there. And so we don't even see those stellar grades. Whereas once you're recommended, we will look at all of that. But we will be looking at the academics at that point, because we each will have our own standard for what we consider to be, strong enough that the applicant has demonstrated that they will succeed in our curriculum. And we've talked a bit about the curriculum involving, not just lessons and ensembles, but also music theory class and music history class. And there is a liberal arts requirement as part of the Bachelor of Music degree, even though it's, it's a small percentage of the degree, it's still part of it. So we do need students that will do well in that environment. So we will look at all of that. The other thing that we'll look at is how many of, which kind of instrument do we need? So just as a regular college might have its sort of buckets of, different kinds of students that it's looking for, types of students, we have many more of those parameters to consider because we can have, X number of flute players and X number of violin players, because we have ensembles that are part of the curriculum that we have to deliver to the students. And so we need the right numbers of students to be able to operate those ensembles and not have too many of one instrument and not enough of another instrument, so that everybody's having the performance experience that they signed up for. And then from there, decisions are made. Usually for a lot of us, application decisions go out these days electronically along with the financial aid offer. So everything that Kathy was talking about sort of all comes together at this decision point, and things go from there. This feeds right into the timeline of when all of this happens, and I believe Beth is going to tell us about that.
Yeah, this is a really good kind of snapshot. If you want to actually take a screenshot of this, you'll have it. But this is pretty typical for most of the peer institutions of ours. So, we're right in fall, getting ready and applying. Applications go live in September. We've talked about the December 1 deadline for applications, as well as the screening. Audition period generally in January, February, early March, with the decisions released no later than April 1. There is a graduate response, which is a little bit earlier on April 15th, and undergraduate response is May 1, which is pretty typical. And that's sort of the May 1 is when you have to tell us which school you've chosen. So we call that the enrollment deadline. So that's a pretty typical timeline for what we're doing musically.
And one last thing we want to mention is that all of our schools are very aware that going to study, especially, the intensity of studying performing art, that there are challenges of adjustment. It would be the same if any of us came outside the US to do our degrees. We would have a level of adjustment, and they kind of fall into several categories. There's adjusting to the academic classes and how teachers teach and what the expectations are for a student. Especially again in the performing arts, there's the question of the competitive level. When you come to a very strong music school, everyone around you is very strong at the art form, at music, or whatever the major is within music, and so you have to be prepared for that. And then there are just simple things about the culture, the food, the way you cross the street. All these things are part of the adjustment of moving to a foreign country. And so if we look at the next slide, we'll see some of the things that we have in place at our schools to help students adjust. There's usually an international student office, and maybe their first responsibility is helping with the visa application process, but they are there as a resource for international students. There's often a writing center or some kind of academic support center where you can get help, especially if you're a non-native English speaker and you're writing a paper or doing some research. You can go to these offices and get support. There's generally some person or department that provides support. Again, if you're not a native English speaker, there's extra support for that, not just writing support, but maybe an advisor or some guidance on being a non-native English speaker. We also have lots of health and counseling services at our schools, not just physical health, but also mental health. Our school every year gives flu shots to students to keep, and staff and faculty, to keep us all healthy and not infecting each other, which I wish we could say the same for the virus, but we're all being very careful. But at a place with performing arts, you might actually have additional counseling, such as physical therapy, health services, that sort of thing that you need as a performing artist. There are career centers that help you get your career off the ground, and even simply provide information about how you get that career off the ground. And then there are lots of student groups. So you might find groups of students who have similar interests to you, whether they're, all from the same country abroad outside the US, or if they're all speaking the same language, or they have certain interests. So these are all to be found. And sometimes at schools, if you don't find the group you want, you petition and create the group. So there are ways to help your adjustment to studying as a student in the US, and schools are there to help you be successful. Once we admit you, we don't want you to leave. We want you to stay and finish the degree program. And so the supports that we provide are there for you.
Wonderful. This has been very full and informative, and just want to thank you once again for sharing this great information. I know questions have been asked and answered already in the Q&A box, but I just want to open it up. We have a few minutes here where we can answer some more questions. Definitely, as always, for every Tuesday talk, we encourage you to send emails and reach out, especially for those specific institutional questions. Each of these institutions want to connect with you and want to answer those questions, have their own kind of other virtual events that they would love for you to be involved in. So please make sure to reach out. I had a question. Given that the audition weighs so heavily in this application process, and given the uncertainty of kind of performing arts as a whole in person during this time, in talking to perhaps internally and your faculty and considering these options, these online audition options, do you have tips on, at Initial V, we talk a lot about authenticity and how to be authentic even in a world of online. And so do you have any tips or thoughts on how to make your audition more authentic when you're not in person? And things that maybe your faculty are considering, maybe things that you as an admissions committee are considering of, like, it could be something practical, like make sure your microphone works, or, or something more philosophical, in terms of how to present yourself differently than you would have, if they were to come on campus.
I'd say that one of the things we do as schools is we specify audition repertoire parameters. And they can be fairly broad, like if you're applying for classical voice, maybe it's simply 3 songs, but I would say that the key of presenting the repertoire has to do with showing that you not only can play it technically, but that you understand it emotionally and can convey that to the faculty who are listening to the audition. The audition is not the time to show how uniquely you can interpret the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. The audition rep is standardized because we need to know that you fit that standard. And so you don't want to go in and, you know, dress very strangely and play something or sing something very oddly interpreted. You want to show that you have the baseline and then some. And so that would be one of the tips that I would give an applicant. My colleagues may have others.
That sounds like good advice. I mean, I think this cycle is particularly odd in that we're not able to host you like we mentioned. And so I think a lot of institutions are doing a recorded audition, but they're also scheduling individual one-on-one lessons / meetings / interviews with faculty. Some of us have areas where we only have one teacher who teaches a certain instrument. So getting to have an interaction with that person would be really, really helpful. And that should happen maybe anyway, but this year it's kind of going to be built in, I think, to a lot of our processes, because that is a way where you can have a one-on-one experience and be very authentic. And it's almost like a sample lesson sort of on Zoom. Not everyone is offering that, but I think that's another way where we're going to break down some of the problem with not being able to meet you in person.
Great, thank you. Matthew, did you have anything to add, or?
I've been dealing with a barking puppy and it just got quiet. So I was reluctant to unmute myself, but no, I think they've really covered it. I think, you know, every school is going to be a little different in this regard in terms of, you know, how much authenticity they want, I guess is the way to put it. How much beyond, you know, what it is that they've said they're asking for. You know, they want you to upload this recording of this repertoire and that's it. You know, a student can always submit additional materials if they feel like there's something, you know, about them that hasn't come through in the regular admissions materials. We just can't guarantee that those will actually be reviewed by the faculty. So again, it's very different from the regular college application, where often they are looking for something, you know, give us something about you that sets you apart. And so they're asking for that artistic supplement, or that, you know, video where you introduce yourself in some creative way. You don't tend to see the music schools asking for those kinds of materials because there are these one-on-one interactions, for one thing. So the students do tend to get to know the teachers, whether, you know, remotely as in most cases now, or otherwise. But really it's just, you know, at the outset, it's really kind of about sticking to, you know, what are the requirements that have been asked for.
Thank you very much. Well, it has been a pleasure once again hosting you all. You have given your time and we really appreciate that. And I know that people are learning a lot about what it means to actually apply to a performing arts institution. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us once again for Tuesday Talks. And we hope everyone has a great evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.